My father died on a Tuesday morning in March. By Friday afternoon, my mother had signed the house over to my brother. I found out at the funeral. She waited until the meal after the service. Ham, green bean casserole, the folding tables the church keeps in the basement. She waited until the room was full. Then she stood beside me at the drinks table, put her hand on my arm, and said it the way you'd mention the weather. Travis is taking the house. It just makes sense, honey. He's the one with the family. I had been paying the mortgage on that house for 9 years. $1,340 on the 4th of every month since I was 25 years old. $147,000. Nobody at that table knew. I said, "Mom, we should talk about this later." And she smiled at me, the church smile, the one for company, and she leaned in close enough that only I could hear her, and she said, "After all I've done for you, Nora, don't make a scene." Here's what my mother didn't know. 9 years ago, my father wouldn't take $1 from me until I signed something. He was ashamed. He said a man doesn't take charity from his daughter. So we made it a loan, on paper. And my father, who never once stood up to her, not in 41 years, took that paper to the county clerk's office in Hartselle, Tennessee, and had it recorded. It's been sitting in the Cade County property records since 2016.
Public.
Stamped. Blue cover sheet. My mother handed my brother a house with my name attached to it, and not one person in that family ever thought to look. If you've ever been the one who quietly kept everything running, the one who paid, who fixed it, who never got thanked because nobody ever admitted you were doing it, then you already know how this story starts.
Stay with me.
Because it does not end the way they planned. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. And if this hits close to home, subscribe. I put a new story up every single day. Let me take you back 9 years. My name is Nora Pruitt. I'm 34. I work as an estate settlement specialist for a life insurance company in Nashville. That's a long title for a simple job. When somebody dies, I'm the person who reads the paperwork. Death certificates, beneficiary designations, liens, probate filings, trust documents that somebody's uncle wrote on a legal pad in 1994 and nobody can read. I've handled 1,100 estates in 9 years. And I can tell you the one thing every single one of them has in common. The paperwork always tells the truth. People lie. Families lie. Grief makes people lie, without even meaning to. But the county recorder's office does not care how anybody feels. It just writes down what happened, and it keeps it forever. I learned that at my job. But I learned it first at my kitchen table, at 25 years old, watching my father's hands shake while he signed his name. Let me tell you about Hartselle, Cade County, Tennessee. Population 4,100. One high school, 2 Baptist churches, a Dollar General, and a Sonic where every kid I ever knew had their first job. The kind of town where the pharmacist knows what you're picking up before you say it. My father, Wendell Pruitt, ran a lathe at Ferris Machine and Tool for 26 years. Same shift, 6 to 2:30. Same green thermos. He'd come through the back door at 3, wash his hands at the kitchen sink for a full minute, and only then say hello to anybody. That was his whole personality. Do it right then talk. My mother, Charlene, did not work outside the house, and she'd tell you that like it was a rank. She ran the women's auxiliary at Second Baptist. She organized the Christmas hamper drive. She decided which family got which pew, and nobody ever argued about it. My brother Travis is 3 years younger than me. Travis was easy. That's the word my mother used, and she used it like a compliment about him and a complaint about me. Travis got a car at 16. I got a bus schedule. Travis got a graduation party with a rented tent. I got a card. I want to be careful here because I'm going to tell you a lot of things about my family, and I don't want you to think I'm keeping score out of spite. I'm keeping score because I'm an estate person. That's just how my head works. When something doesn't balance, I write it down and I look at it later. In our house, Love had a ledger, and Travis was always on the credit side of it. I left Hartzell at 18 on a partial scholarship to Middle Tennessee State. Accounting, then a certificate in insurance claims. I was the first Pruitt to finish college. My mother told the church I was off in Nashville, in the same tone she used for people who'd moved away and gotten strange. I came home every third weekend for 9 years anyway. Then in the spring of 2016, my father's back went. It wasn't dramatic. That's the part nobody tells you. There's no ambulance, no phone call in the night. He just came home one Thursday and sat down in the truck in the driveway and couldn't get out of it for 40 minutes. 2 ruptured discs and a spinal fusion that didn't take. Ferris Machine kept him on payroll for 11 weeks, then moved him to short-term disability, then to long-term, then to nothing. He was 52 years old. The disability check was $1,006 a month. The mortgage was $1,340. I want you to sit with those 2 numbers for a second, because everything that happened over the next 9 years lives in the gap between them. I got the call from my mother on a Sunday in June.
She didn't ask.
She never asked. My mother had a way of describing a problem so completely that not solving it made you the problem. The bank sent a letter, Nora. I don't know what your father expects me to do about it. I don't know what any of us are supposed to do. I said, how far behind are you? Well, I'm not the one who handles that. They were 2 months behind. I drove down that next weekend with my laptop and a folder. I sat at the kitchen table, the same laminate table with the burn ring where my mother set a hot pan down in 1998, and I ran the numbers with my father while my mother stayed in the front room with the television on loud. He couldn't look at me. He kept turning his coffee cup a quarter turn at a time. I said, I can cover the difference. $334 a month. That's nothing to me. It was not nothing to me. I was making $41,000 a year, and I had a car payment.
But you say that to a proud man.
You say that's nothing.
He said no.
He said no 4 times over about 2 hours, and then he said the thing I've thought about every day since. I'm not going to be a bill, Nora. So I told him it wouldn't be a gift. I told him it would be a loan, that I'd write it up properly, and he'd pay it back when he could, and if he couldn't, it'd come out of the house someday, and that's just how it works. That's what people do. He thought about that for a long time. Then he said, then we do it right. All the way right. And here's where my father surprised me. He didn't want a handshake. He didn't want a note on the back of an envelope. He wanted it typed. He wanted it notarized. He wanted it recorded, which is a word most people don't know, and I only knew it because of my job. Recording means you take a document to the county register of deeds and they stamp it and photograph it, and it becomes part of the permanent public record of that piece of property. It means anybody who ever looks up that address, forever, sees your name attached to it. I said, Dad, that's a lot for $300 a month. He said, it's not a lot. It's just true. We drove to the Cade County Courthouse on a Tuesday in July. 94 degrees. The window unit in the records office was losing badly. The document was 3 pages. A promissory note and a deed of trust, which is just a lien, a legal marker that says the property secures a debt. It doesn't make you an owner. I want to be clear about that because it matters later. I never owned 1 square foot of that house, and I never wanted to. It made me a creditor. There were 2 witnesses. One was a notary named Priya Ramesh who worked the customer window at First Cumberland Bank and did notarizations on her lunch break for $6. The other one was Marisol Vega. I need to tell you about Marisol because she's going to matter more than anybody at that courthouse understood at the time. Marisol was 52 then. She came 3 mornings a week through a home health agency out of Cookeville, helped my dad with his exercises, checked his medications, drove him to physical therapy in Sparta because my mother said the drive made her nervous. Marisol had been coming for 4 months at that point. She'd end up coming for 9 years. My mother called her the girl. As in, the girl comes Tuesdays. As in, you'll have to ask the girl, I don't keep track. Marisol Vega was 2 years younger than my mother and had raised 3 children by herself and could read a medication chart faster than most nurses I've met. That day at the courthouse, She signed as a witness because she happened to be there. She'd driven Dad. The clerk asked for a second signature, and Marisol just picked up the pen. She wrote her name in careful print letters, the way people do when they know a document matters. 9 years later, that signature is going to be the reason none of this could be undone. My mother wasn't there. I asked Dad about that on the drive back. He was quiet for about a mile. Then he said, "Your mother doesn't need to be in the middle of everything." I let it go. I was 25, and I thought that was a man avoiding an argument. I didn't understand for 9 more years that it was a man building something. The first payment went out on the 4th of August, 2016. I set it up as an automatic transfer, so I'd never have to think about it and never have to be thanked for it. Both of those turned out to be true. I want to describe what those 9 years actually looked like because I think people hear she paid the mortgage and picture something noble. It wasn't noble. It was Tuesdays. It was me at 26 eating the same lentil soup 4 days a week because I built my grocery budget around a number that didn't have room in it. It was driving a 2007 Corolla until it had 206,000 miles on it and the passenger window stopped going down. It was not going to my college roommate's wedding in Charleston because the flight was $380. It was a spreadsheet. Tab 1, my budget. Tab 2, the loan balance with interest calculated at 2% because my father insisted there be interest and I insisted it be low, and 2% was where we landed. Tab 3, added later, was labeled just notes. Every payment got a row. Date, amount, running balance, confirmation number. That's not obsession. That's my job. I do it for strangers 1,100 times over. I did it for my own family exactly the same way. My father called me every 4th of the month. Not to thank me. He never once said thank you, and I never once expected him to. He'd call and say, "It go through okay?" And I'd say, "It went through." And he'd say, "All right then." And we talk about the vols or about whether the sycamore in the side yard was dying. 4 minutes. Every month. 9 years. I have every one of those calls in my phone log. I've never deleted a single one. They were 2 months behind. I drove down that next weekend with my laptop and a folder. I sat at the kitchen table, the same laminate table with the burn ring where my mother set a hot pan down in 1998, and I ran the numbers with my father while my mother stayed in the front room with the television on loud. He couldn't look at me. He kept turning his coffee cup a quarter turn at a time. I said, "I can cover the difference. $334 a month. That's nothing to me." It was not nothing to me. I was making $41,000 a year, and I had a car payment.
But you say that to a proud man.
You say that's nothing.
He said no.
He said no 4 times over about 2 hours, and then he said the thing I've thought about every day since. "I'm not going to be a bill, Nora." So I told him it wouldn't be a gift. I told him it would be a loan, that I'd write it up properly, and he'd pay it back when he could, and if he couldn't, it'd come out of the house someday, and that's just how it works. That's what people do. He thought about that for a long time. Then he said, "Then we do it right. All the way right." And here's where my father surprised me. He didn't want a handshake. He didn't want a note on the back of an envelope. He wanted it typed. He wanted it notarized. He wanted it recorded, which is a word most people don't know, and I only knew it because of my job. Recording means you take a document to the county register of deeds and they stamp it and photograph it, and it becomes part of the permanent public record of that piece of property. It means anybody who ever looks up that address, forever, sees your name attached to it. I said, "Dad, that's a lot for $300 a month." He said, "It's not a lot. It's just true." We drove to the Cade County Courthouse on a Tuesday in July. 94 degrees. The window unit in the records office was losing badly. The document was 3 pages. A promissory note and a deed of trust, which is just a lien, a legal marker that says the property secures a debt. It doesn't make you an owner. I want to be clear about that because it matters later. I never owned 1 square foot of that house, and I never wanted to. It made me a creditor. There were 2 witnesses. One was a notary named Priya Ramesh who worked the customer window at First Cumberland Bank and did notarizations on her lunch break for $6. The other one was Marisol Vega. I need to tell you about Marisol because she's going to matter more than anybody at that courthouse understood at the time. Marisol was 52 then. She came 3 mornings a week through a home health agency out of Cookeville, helped my dad with his exercises, checked his medications, drove him to physical therapy in Sparta because my mother said the drive made her nervous. Marisol had been coming for 4 months at that point. She'd end up coming for 9 years. My mother called her the girl. As in, the girl comes Tuesdays. As in, you'll have to ask the girl, I don't keep track. Marisol Vega was 2 years younger than my mother and had raised 3 children by herself and could read a medication chart faster than most nurses I've met. That day at the courthouse, she signed as a witness because she happened to be there. She'd driven Dad. The clerk asked for a second signature, and Marisol just picked up the pen. She wrote her name in careful print letters, the way people do when they know a document matters. 9 years later, that signature is going to be the reason none of this could be undone. My mother wasn't there. I asked Dad about that on the drive back. He was quiet for about a mile. Then he said, "Your mother doesn't need to be in the middle of everything." I let it go. I was 25, and I thought that was a man avoiding an argument. I didn't understand for 9 more years that it was a man building something. The first payment went out on the 4th of August, 2016. I set it up as an automatic transfer, so I'd never have to think about it and never have to be thanked for it. Both of those turned out to be true. I want to describe what those 9 years actually looked like because I think people hear she paid the mortgage and picture something noble. It wasn't noble. It was Tuesdays. It was me at 26 eating the same lentil soup 4 days a week because I'd built my grocery budget around a number that didn't have room in it. It was driving a 2007 Corolla until it had 206,000 miles on it, and the passenger window stopped going down. It was not going to my college roommate's wedding in Charleston because the flight was $380. It was a spreadsheet. Tab 1, my budget. Tab 2, the loan balance with interest calculated at 2% because my father insisted there be interest and I insisted it be low, and 2% was where we landed. Tab 3, added later, was labeled just notes. Every payment got a row. Date, amount, running balance, confirmation number. That's not obsession. That's my job. I do it for strangers 1,100 times over. I did it for my own family exactly the same way. My father called me every 4th of the month. Not to thank me. He never once said thank you, and I never once expected him to. He'd call and say, "It go through okay?" And I'd say, "It went through." And he'd say, "All right then." And we talk about the vols or about whether the sycamore in the side yard was dying. 4 minutes. Every month. 9 years. I have every one of those calls in my phone log. I've never deleted a single one. Travis got engaged in 2018 to a girl named Kayla Bostic from over in Cookeville. The wedding was at the Cade County Fairgrounds Pavilion with 240 guests and a caterer from Nashville. My mother told everyone it cost $11,000 and she told it in a tone that meant ask me how we managed it. I was a bridesmaid. Dusty Rose. $412 for the dress, the shoes, and the alterations. My mother gave a toast that night about how proud she was of her children. She said Travis's name 4 times. I counted. Of course I counted. That November, Dad's disability got reviewed and reduced by $91 a month. I adjusted the transfer. I didn't tell anybody. My daughter Cass was born in 2020. Her father and I were married for 2 years and divorced by the time she was 14 months old, and I'm not going to spend your time on that. He's a decent man who wanted a different life. It ended quietly and we're fine. Cass is 9 now. She reads at a 7th grade level, and she keeps a list of every dog she's ever met, with names. She got that from me, and I want to be honest, I don't entirely think it's a gift. Here's the thing about Cass and this story. The month she was born, I opened a college savings account for her with $200. And every month for 9 years, I have put into that account exactly what was left over after the fourth. Some months that was $90. Some months it was nothing. The account has $11,400 in it. Her mortgage, my parents' mortgage, has $147,000 in it. That's not a complaint. I made that choice every single month with my eyes open. But I want you to know the shape of it. Because later, when my mother tells me what family owes each other, that's the arithmetic I'm going to be sitting with. My mother met Cass 11 times in 9 years. I know because I have the photos and I have the dates on the photos. In 2022, Dad had a bad winter. Pneumonia in January that turned into 6 days at Cookeville Regional. I took a week of PTO and slept in the vinyl chair. Marisol came every day, off the clock. The agency doesn't pay for hospital visits. She came anyway at 7 in the morning before her first client, and she'd bring him the terrible coffee from the lobby machine because he liked it and she thought that was funny. My mother came on day 3 and day 5. She brought a card and her sister Bernie, and she cried in the hallway where the nurses could see her, and she told the charge nurse she just didn't know how she was going to manage. I want to say something here, and I want to say it fairly. My mother is not a monster. She's a woman who was raised to believe that her worth was in how the family looked, and who never once in 70 years had anybody tell her that wasn't true. She was terrified. She'd been terrified since 2016, and she had absolutely no equipment for it. So she turned it into performance, because performance was the only thing she'd ever been good at. I understand her. Understanding somebody and letting them bill you are two different things. That March, Dad asked me to bring the file. That's what he called it.
The file.
The manila envelope with the recorded deed of trust in it. 3 pages with the register's stamp and the blue backing sheet they used in Cade County until they went digital in 2019. I brought it down from Nashville. He sat on the edge of the bed with it on his knees, and he read all 3 pages like he'd never seen them, and he'd seen them 100 times. Then he said, "Does this hold up? If I'm not here?" I said, "It holds up." He said, "Even if she says different?" And that was the first time. 7 years in, and that was the first time my father said out loud that he expected my mother to say different. I said, "Dad, what are you worried about?" He turned the pages over. He squared them on his knee. He said, "I'm not worried. That's the point of paper." I put the file back in the envelope. I drove home. I did not understand what he'd just told me. He died on Tuesday, March 11th, at 4:40 in the afternoon. Heart. Fast, at home in his chair. Marisol was there. My mother was at the church setting up for the Wednesday supper. Marisol called 911, and then she called me before she called my mother, and I have thought about that 100 times, and I have never once thought it was wrong. I got there at 8:15 that night. The house was full already. That's how Heart Cell works. Bernie was in the kitchen with a foil pan. 2 women from the church were doing dishes that weren't dirty. Travis was on the porch on his phone. My mother was in the front room in the good chair, receiving. That's the only word for it. She had a tissue in her fist, and she was accepting condolences one at a time like a line at a wake, and she was doing it well, and some part of me that I'm not proud of stood in the doorway and thought, she's been waiting to be good at something for a very long time.
She saw me.
She held out her hand. She said, "There she is. There's my girl." And then, to the room, Nora came all the way from Nashville. All the way. It's an hour and 40 minutes. I'd made that drive 260 times. The group chat was an accident. Kayla did it. My brother's wife. Thursday morning, the day before the funeral, she was adding people to a thread about who was bringing what to the reception, and she typed my name into the wrong field. She meant to add me to reception food. She added me to a thread called Dad Stuff. 3 people. My mother, Travis,
Kayla.
Created February the 19th. 3 weeks before my father died. I was in the parking lot of the Hartzell Funeral Home at 10:15 in the morning with a bag of programs on the passenger seat when my phone buzzed 41 times in about 9 seconds. That's what it looks like when you get added to a live thread. It backfills. 206 messages. I want to be very clear about something because it matters to me. I did not go looking for this. I did not open anybody's phone. I did not ask anybody to send me anything. My brother's wife typed the wrong name, and a month of my family's private conversation landed in my hand in a funeral home parking lot. I read all of it. I sat in that car for 51 minutes, and I read every single message twice. February 19th. My mother. Dr. Vaughn says weeks, not months. We need to be practical. Nobody wants to think about it, but somebody has to. Travis. What's the house worth now? Kayla. Zillow says 218. Travis. Mom, what's owed on it? My mother. Around 40, I think. Your father handled that. Around 40. I think. Your father handled that. 9 years. 9 years of a wire hitting that account on the 4th of the month, and she thought it was around 40, I think. March 2nd. Travis. So, if it's clean, we're looking at 175 equity minimum. Kayla. Do you have to split it with Nora? Travis. There's no will. Mom just puts it in my name. My mother. That's what your father would have wanted. Travis is the one with the family. Travis is the one with the family. I have a daughter. My mother has met her 11 times. March 8th. 3 days before he died. Kayla. When are you going to tell Nora? My mother. After the service. Not before. She won't make a scene at her own father's funeral. Travis. Should I get the quitclaim done before or after? My mother. After. Let her get through the week. And Travis, don't bring up money in front of her. Just let her keep doing what she does. Just let her keep doing what she does. That's it. That's the whole thing. 9 years, $147,000, and my mother's entire understanding of me fits in 7 words. Just let her keep doing what she does. I did not cry in that parking lot. I screenshotted 206 messages. It took 19 minutes. Then I emailed them to myself, and I emailed them to my work address as a second copy, because that is what you do with a document you cannot afford to lose. Then I carried the programs into the funeral home, and I helped Bernie fold them. If you've ever found out in writing in their own words exactly what your family thought you were for, then you know that it doesn't feel like heartbreak. It feels like the room getting very quiet and very clear. Stay with me, because what I did next, I've been carrying in a manila envelope for 9 years, and I didn't even know it.
Subscribe.
You're going to want to see where this lands. The funeral was Friday at 11 at Second Baptist. 210 people. My father worked at one company for 26 years in a town of 4,000, and every man who ever ran a machine next to him came. They stood in the back in clean shirts with their hands folded, and they did not know what to do with themselves. Travis gave the eulogy.
He was good at it.
I want to give him that. He's always been good in a room. He talked about Dad teaching him to change the oil in the Silverado. He talked about the smell of the shop. He got a laugh with a story about a fishing trip in 2009. He did not mention the last 9 years one time. Not the fusion. Not the disability. Not the pneumonia. Not the walker. Not the 410 physical therapy appointments. Travis eulogized a man who stopped existing in 2016. Marisol sat in the 4th row on the left with her hands in her lap. Nobody put her in the family section. 9 years, 3 mornings a week, and she sat in the 4th row. I got up during the second hymn, walked back, and sat down next to her. She looked at me. She didn't say anything. She just moved her purse off the seat. We sat there together for the rest of it. My mother mentioned it to me afterward, at the door, while people were filing out. She said, "That looked strange, honey." People noticed. I said, "Good." The reception was in the fellowship hall in the basement. Folding tables with the vinyl cloths. 2 hams, a pan of dressing, 7 casseroles, a sheet cake somebody had ordered from Kroger with a cross on it in blue icing. Coffee in the 40-cup urn that Second Baptist has had since before I was born, and that has never once made good coffee. I worked the room for an hour, and I was fine. I'm good at this. That's the thing people don't understand about being the responsible one. You get excellent at rooms. I shook hands. I said, he thought the world of you 11 times and meant it 9. I refilled the urn. I found the extra folding chairs in the closet under the stairs because I'm the only one who remembered they were there. And the whole time, my phone was in my jacket pocket with 206 messages in it, and I could feel the weight of it the way you feel a stone in your shoe. Bernie found me by the coffee. My mother's sister, 62, kind in a shallow way, has never once in her life said something difficult on purpose. She said, "Your mama's worried about you." I said, "Is she?" She says you've been distant. I drove down 260 times in 9 years, Bernie. She patted my arm and said, "Well, grief takes everybody different. That's the thing about a small town. There's a sentence for every occasion and none of them mean anything." Travis found me at about 1:30. He'd had 2 beers in the parking lot with his cousins. I could smell it, and he was in that particular mood men get at funerals where they've decided to be the head of the family now. He put his hand on my shoulder.
Hey.
You holding up? I'm all right. Listen. He looked around the room first. That's a tell. Me and Kayla have been talking.
About Mom.
She can't stay in that house by herself. I said, she's 66. Yeah, but you know how she is. I did know how she is. He said, we're thinking we move in. Take care of her. It just makes sense, we've got the kids. The house is 4 bedrooms, she's not using it. I said, and? He blinked. What do you mean, and? You said we've been talking. That means there's an and. Travis has never been able to hold his own face. He got that from Mom's side. He said, well, Mom's going to put it in my name. For the taxes and everything, it's easier. For the taxes.
Yeah.
I asked him what he thought was owed on the house. He said, 40, 45? Something like that. Dad had it about paid off. Dad had it about paid off. I looked at my brother across a folding table with a paper plate of ham in his hand, in the basement of the church where we were both baptized, for hours after we buried our father. And I asked him one question. I said, Travis, who's been paying that mortgage? And he said, and I want you to hear this exactly the way he said it because he wasn't being cruel, he genuinely did not know, and that is so much worse. He said, Dad's disability, I guess? I said, Dad's disability was $1,006. Okay. The mortgage was $1,340. He stood there and did that math for about 4 seconds. I watched it happen. And then he did the thing my family has always done, which is, he decided it wasn't his to think about. He said, huh. Well, they worked it out, I guess. And he went to get more cake. That's when my mother came to the drinks table. That's the moment from the beginning of this story. Her hand on my arm. The church smile. Travis is taking the house. It just makes sense, honey. He's the one with the family. And when I said we should talk about it later, after all I've done for you, Nora, don't make a scene. I want to tell you what I felt in that second, because it wasn't rage. It was recognition. After all I've done for you. She has said that sentence to me my entire life. She said it when I was 14 and didn't want to sing in the Christmas program. She said it when I was 19 and came home with a nose piercing. She said it when I was 28 and couldn't come to Easter because I had the flu. It has never once been about something she did. It's a toll. It's the fee for being allowed to want something. And standing there in that basement with 206 messages in my jacket pocket, I finally heard it properly. It's not a claim about the past. It's an instruction about the future. It means, keep paying. I said, all right, Mom. And I refilled the coffee urn. I stayed in Hartzell 6 days. I did what I always do. I canceled Dad's Medicare supplemental and his AARP and his cell line. I called Ferris Machine about the retiree death benefit, $900. They still do that. I got 12 certified copies of the death certificate because in my job I've learned that everybody says they need one and everybody actually needs four. I sat with the funeral home's itemized bill for 40 minutes and found $410 in charges that shouldn't have been there. A grief support package. A second limousine we didn't use. I got them removed. Nobody thanked me. Nobody knew. My mother spent that week on the phone. I'd hear her in the front room. Well, Travis is handling everything. Travis has been my rock. I don't know what I'd do without that boy. Travis came by twice. Once to get Dad's guns out of the closet, and once with Kayla and a tape measure. I watched my brother's wife measure the front room of my father's house 8 days after we buried him. She was standing right where his chair was. They'd already moved the chair to the garage. On the Wednesday, Marisol came by to collect her things. She had a bag in the hall closet, her spare scrubs, a blood pressure cuff, a laminated exercise chart she'd made herself. My mother was at the church. Marisol and I sat at the kitchen table. The one with the burn ring. She said, "He talked about you." I said, "Did he?" Every Tuesday. Every single Tuesday, Mija. He'd say, "Nora's got it handled." Like it was the answer to a question nobody asked. I asked her what she meant. She thought about it. Marisol is a careful person. She said, "I think he knew he couldn't fix it. His wife, the way it was in this house. So he fixed the one thing he could reach." I said, "What's that?" And she looked at me like I was being slow. She said, "The paper, honey." He made me sign the paper. I sat back in that chair. I said, "Marisol, do you remember what you signed?" She said, "The bank lady wrote the date wrong the first time, and we had to do it again." He was so particular. He made her write it out twice. She said, "He told me in the car afterward." He said, "That's Nora's. Nobody can take that off of there. Nobody can take that off of there." He said that in July of 2016.
To the home health aide.
In a Buick in a courthouse parking lot in 94-degree heat. 9 years before he died. My father, who never argued with my mother once, not one time in 41 years, who let her decide the pews and the hampers and which of his children was easy. My father had walked into a county office and made me permanent, and he never told me, because if he'd told me, I'd have known he was afraid of her. And a man like my father would rather be misunderstood by his daughter for 9 years than admit that out loud. I put my head down on that kitchen table, and I cried for the first time all week. Marisol put her hand on my back and didn't say anything, which is the correct thing to do, and almost nobody knows it. I drove back to Nashville on the Friday.
Cass had a school thing.
Life doesn't stop for this. 12 days after the funeral, a letter arrived. Not a text. A letter. My mother's handwriting on the envelope, the loopy cursive she learned at Cade County High in 1976. Inside, 1 page of her stationery, the cream kind with the dogwood at the top she's used my whole life, and 1 page from a legal pad. The stationery page said this. I'm going to read it exactly.
Nora.
I know this has been a hard time for all of us. Your father would want this family to stay together, and I am trying to honor that. Travis and Kayla are moving in on the 1st. I have spoken with Mr. Dunn at the bank, and everything is in order. I know you will want to continue helping the way you always have. Family looks after family. That is what your father believed, and I hope it is what you believe too. Love, Mother. Everything is in order. I know you will want to continue helping. Not one question mark on the entire page. And then the second page. The legal pad page. Blue ballpoint. Her handwriting. Numbered.
1.
Mortgage payment continuing. $13.40 a month.
2.
Property taxes, Cade County. $2,900 a year. 3. Homeowners insurance. $1,700 a year.
4.
Balance owed to Hartzell Funeral Home. $4,310.
5.
Travis's truck payment, temporary, $520 a month. 6. New water heater, $1,900. At the bottom, underlined twice. Monthly total $1,860. Plus one time, $6,210. That's $28,530 a year. To pay the mortgage, taxes, and insurance on a house that was being put in my brother's name. And his truck. I read it 4 times at my kitchen counter in Nashville with my coat still on. And here's what I kept coming back to. It wasn't the number. It was that she wrote it on a legal pad. She sat at that laminate table, the one with the burn ring, where my father signed his name in 2016, and she got out a pen, and she thought about it, and she numbered it. 6 items.
Somebody put work into that.
There was no apology in that envelope. There was no thank you. There was no acknowledgement that anything had ever been paid at all, because in my mother's version of the last 9 years, nothing ever had. Your father handled that. I did not call her. I did something else. I did what I do 1,100 times a year for strangers. I pulled the file. Monday morning, from my desk in Nashville, on my lunch break, I logged into the Cade County Register of Deeds online portal. It costs $4 to pull a document. $4. I typed in the parcel number. I already knew it by heart. And there it was. Instrument number 2016-00074812. Recorded July 19, 2016, at 2:41 p.m. Deed of Trust. Grantor: Wendell R. Pruitt and Charlene M. Pruitt. Beneficiary: Nora Elise Pruitt. Both their names. I want you to understand what that means, because I didn't fully understand it myself until that moment, and I do this for a living. My mother's signature is on that document. I wasn't there when she signed it. My father took it to her. I don't know what he told her it was. I will never know, because both people in that conversation are gone or aren't talking. But her signature is on page 2, notarized by Priya Ramesh at First Cumberland Bank, dated the same day. For 9 years, my mother has been a signatory on a lien against her own house, securing a debt to her daughter. And she either forgot, or she never read it, or she read it and decided it wasn't real because she decided most things weren't real. I don't know which one. It doesn't legally matter which one. Then I pulled the balance. $147,420 in principal. $11,188 in accrued interest at 2%. $158,608. Against a house Zillow said was worth $218, which my brother believed had $40,000 owed on it and $175 in equity. There was no $175. There was $59,000 in that house, and every dollar above it was mine. I want to be honest with you about what I did next, because I think people expect a confrontation here. I didn't confront anybody. I did one thing, and one thing only. On April the 2nd, I logged into my bank, and I canceled the automatic transfer. That's it. That's the entire plan. 6 clicks. I didn't send a letter. I didn't call. I didn't tell my brother about the lien, or my mother about the group chat. I did not remove one single thing from that house or that family. I just stopped adding to it. On April the 4th, for the first time in 9 years, $1,340 did not leave my account. And nothing happened. That's the strange part. For 17 days, absolutely nothing happened. The bank called my mother on April the 21st. She called me at 8:40 that night. No greeting. Nora, the bank says the payment didn't go through. I don't know what your father set up, but something's gone wrong with it. I said, nothing's gone wrong. Well, it says past due. I said, that's right. Silence. About 4 seconds. Then, I don't understand what you're telling me. I said, Mom, I'm not going to be paying it anymore. And she said, and this is the sentence I want you to hear, because it's the whole 9 years in one line. Paying what? I said, good night, Mom. The rest of it came apart on its own, and I had nothing to do with any of it. Travis had been to First Cumberland to set up a home equity line. He wanted $30,000 for a shop building and a new truck. He told the loan officer there was $175,000 in equity in the house because that's what he believed. The bank ordered a title search. That's routine. That's just what happens. A title company in Cookeville pulls every recorded instrument on a parcel going back 40 years, and they charge about $120 for it, and a clerk reads it in maybe 11 minutes. Instrument number 2016-00744812. Recorded. Stamped. Blue backing. 9 years old, and sitting there the entire time like a rock in a field. The loan officer's name was Ray Dunn. He'd known my father for 30 years. He called Travis on a Wednesday afternoon and told him there was an existing deed of trust in first position for $158,000, and that the beneficiary was his sister. Travis called me 11 minutes later. He didn't say hello either. That's a family trait, apparently. He said, "What did you do?" I said, "Nothing, Travis." That's what I keep telling everybody. They wanted me to come down. My mother called it sitting down as a family, which in my family has never once meant sitting down as a family. I drove to Hartselle on a Saturday in May. Cass stayed with a friend. I brought one thing with me, a manila envelope. They were already at the table when I came in. Mom at the end where Dad used to sit. Travis across. Kayla standing by the counter with her arms crossed, which told me she'd been told to stand there. Aunt Bernie was in the front room with the television on, pretending not to listen, which is Bernie's entire role in this family. Nobody offered me coffee. I sat down. I put the envelope on the table in front of me, and I did not open it. My mother started. She had a whole thing prepared. I could tell because it had paragraphs. She said that the family was in crisis, that her husband of 41 years was 3 weeks in the ground, that she had never in her life been treated the way she was being treated, that she didn't know what I thought I was accomplishing. She said, "Your father would be ashamed." I let her finish. That's something I've learned doing 1,100 estates. Let people finish. They'll tell you the whole case against you, and they'll leave the holes in it themselves. When she was done, I asked one question. I said, "Mom, who's been paying the mortgage?" And she said, "Your father." And she stopped, because she was sitting in a kitchen where the bank had just called her about a past due notice, and a title company had just found my name on a lien. And even Charlene Pruitt could not make that sentence go all the way to the end. So I opened the envelope. I did it the way I do it at work, slowly, in order, face up, turn toward them, one page at a time. Page 1. Promissory note, dated July 19th, 2016. Principal advanced monthly. Interest at 2% per annum. Borrower, Wendell R. Pruitt and Charlene M. Pruitt. I turned it around and slid it across. Page 2. Signatures. That's Dad's. And that 1 inch, I put my finger on it, is yours. My mother looked at it for a long time. Travis leaned over to look too, and Kayla came off the counter to look, and for about 15 seconds the three of them were reading the same page, and nobody was breathing very much. Page 3. Deed of Trust, recorded July 19th, 2016, at 2:41 in the afternoon. Instrument number 2016-00744812. Cade County Register of Deeds. First position. Then the fourth page, which is the one I made myself. This is the payment history. 108 monthly transfers. Date, amount, confirmation number. Principal $147,420. Accrued interest $11,188. I set it down flat. $158,608. Nobody said anything. Bernie had turned the television off. Travis said quietly, "The house is only worth $218." I said, "I know." He said, "So there's nothing." I said, "There's $59,000 before selling costs." And my brother, who is not a bad man, who is a 31-year-old who has never once had to be the one, put both hands flat on the table and looked at the wood and said, "I already told the bank." That's when my mother said the true thing. It came out sideways, the way true things do when somebody spent 40 years not saying them. She was still looking at page 2, at her own signature, and she said, "I remember signing it." I said, "You do?" She said, "He brought it in on a tray with my coffee. He said it was for the bank." And I said, "What's it for?" And he said it's for if something happens to me. She was quiet for a second, and I signed it, and I didn't read it, and I have not thought about it one time in 9 years. I said, "Why didn't you read it?" And my mother, 66 years old, in a beige cardigan, at the table where she'd fed us both for 30 years,
Said this.
because I knew it wasn't going to say my name on it. My mother lost our house in 1971. I was 11. They put the furniture on the grass. On the grass, Nora, where everybody drove past it. I have been scared of that every day of my life since. Every single day. And your father knew it, and he never once said a word about it. And then he went and made a paper that meant if he died, I'd be sitting in a house that belonged to somebody else. And there it was. For about 10 seconds, I saw her. Not the church version. Not the performance. An 11-year-old girl watching a sofa get carried onto a lawn. And I ached for her. I want to be honest, I did. Everything she is, she built out of that afternoon in 1971, and nobody ever helped her build it any better. I said, "Mom, that's why he did it." She looked up. I said, "He didn't do it to take the house from you. He did it so the house couldn't be taken by anybody, including Travis, including a bank. He put it under my name because I'm the only one in this family who reads things." And for 1 second, I thought she was going to let that in. Then her chin came up, and she said, "Well,
You don't need it, Nora. You've got your job.
Travis has the children." And that was the end of it. Because she just told me she'd been terrified her whole life of ending up with nothing. And in the same breath, she decided the person who should end up with nothing was me. The ache stopped. It just stopped. I said this, and then I left. I said, "I'm not taking the house. I never wanted the house. I don't want it now. Here's what I'll do. I'll have my attorney draw up a life estate. You live in that house until you die, Mom. Every day. Nobody can move you, nobody can sell it out from under you, and nobody can borrow against it. And that includes Travis. The lien stays. When the house eventually sells, my $158,000 comes out first. Whatever's left goes to Travis. That's $59,000 he did not have 3 weeks ago and does not have to do anything to earn. And I'll start the payments again on the 1st of June, because you living in that house is what Dad wanted, and I'm not going to be the one who undoes the only thing he ever did for himself." Travis said, "So you're still paying?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Then what's the difference?" And I said, "The difference is that everybody at this table now knows it. That's it. That's the whole thing I wanted. For 9 years, I was the reason this house stood up, and every one of you got to believe it stood up by itself. I'm done being the part of the story nobody tells." I picked up the envelope. I said one more thing to my mother, and then I went out through the back door the way my father always came in. I said, "You told me not to make a scene. Mom, I have never made a scene in my life. That's exactly how you got 9 years out of me." Travis and Kayla did not move in. The equity line was denied on the 12th of May. They bought a double wide out on Route 70 with Kayla's father's help, and I hear it's nice. My mother lives in the house, alone. The life estate was recorded in July, instrument number 2025-00311140, if anybody's counting, and I am. I pay the mortgage on the 1st of every month. It's 141 payments to go. I'll be 46. We speak about once a month. It's short, and it's polite, and it is not warm. She has never said thank you, and I've stopped waiting for it, because I understand now that saying thank you would mean admitting it happened, and admitting it happened would mean she'd been wrong for 9 years, and my mother would sooner sit in the dark. Travis texted me in September. One line. I didn't know. I texted back, I believe you. That's true. And it's also not a pardon, and he knows the difference. We're all right. Bernie tells people at church that there was a misunderstanding about the estate. Let her. 2 things I want to leave you with. The first is Marisol. In June, Travis was clearing the garage and put my father's tools out on the driveway for a yard sale. 26 years of them. The Craftsman chest, the good calipers, the machinist square he'd had since 1989. I drove down, and I bought the whole lot for $200 and I loaded it in my car. And when I got the chest home, I found something on the underside of the lid. A piece of masking tape. Faded. My father's block printing in carpenter's pencil. It said, M. Vega. He'd marked it. At some point in that garage alone, he had decided who those tools belonged to and he had written it down. Because writing it down was the only way my father ever knew how to say a thing. Marisol has them. Her son is an HVAC apprentice in Cookeville. She sent me a picture of him using the calipers, and I have it on my refrigerator. The second thing is Cass. Her account has 11,400 in it, and it is going to be a very long time before it's enough, and that's all right. Because last month, she asked me why we drive down to Hartselle to see a grandma who doesn't call. And I told her the truth. I said, because somebody has to be the person who does the right thing even when nobody claps. And Cass, 9 years old, said, does it have to be you every time? And I said, no, baby. Not every time. Not anymore. That's my story. 108 payments, 1 manila envelope, and a piece of masking tape on the underside of a toolbox lid. Here's what 9 years taught me. Help that nobody is allowed to mention isn't help. It's a secret somebody else is keeping for their own comfort. If you're carrying something for your family right now, and none of them will say it out loud, say it out loud yourself. Write it down. Put a date on it. My father couldn't stand up to my mother once in 41 years. So he did the only thing a quiet man can do.